Hello, and you are listening to Squash Radio. This is a brand new podcast that wants to bring the inside of squash to life by serving up the best stories. We are launching this channel with some in-depth interviews with some great people from the squash world. But we're also trying a little experiment first by doing two versions of each interview. One is the full-length interview that Squash Radio had with each guest, and two is a more produced version that takes some of the highlights from each conversation. Making those cuts is actually pretty challenging since we think it's all great content. But let us know what you think. Should we continue to do both? Send us an email to squashradio@gmail.com. Also, if you have any great stories that involve squash, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and thank you for listening. What about this?
This call is being recorded.
Hey there, squash fans, and welcome to another episode of Squash Radio. We're very excited to bring you this guest today. He's based out of Chicago, and he's a guy that just radiates enthusiasm while even working tirelessly. He's been a pillar of the squash community in the Midwest, and just in general, is a great guy. This is John Flanigan, who is the athletic director at the University Club of Chicago and is also part of the 6-person leadership team to help oversee the strategic direction, finances, and operation of the club. Prior to his role as athletic director, he was the head squash professional at the University Club as well as in Minneapolis, and has also served as the tournament director of 3 U.S. Open squash championships during his career. In 2015, Squash Magazine named him as part of the top 50 most influential persons in squash in the United States. Outside of squash, he also has a passion for literature, poetry, and music, where he tries to practice almost every day. He writes his own music and does several performances a year with his band 30 South. I had the pleasure of overlapping with John at the University Club of Chicago when I was the assistant squash pro and assistant tournament director of the Windy City Open for almost 5 years. We've since stayed in close contact and overlapped on several other squash projects. So here's a little overview of what we talk about during our conversation. We kick off the conversation talking about John's path to finding his first squash court, but then shift gears to talk about his role within the global squash community as the tournament director of the Windy City Open, which is one of the top 8 squash tournaments in the world. We do spend a fair amount of time talking about the Windy City Open, and for good reason. There's so many facets to this event. But we start off with the basics on how to get the glass court into the building. So as you may know, in the club industry, there's always an expectation to go above and beyond to deliver. And the story that John shares with us about the Windy City Open and how they get the glass court into the venue, I think illustrates it pretty well. The rest of the time we spend talking about sponsors and how they make the event possible, but also the value that the sponsors get out of the event. And don't forget to stay tuned for the quickfire round with John Flanigan and find out about his new goal that many people might find a significant challenge. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and here we go. So I've shared a little bit about where John is today in his career, but the path to get there, even as John would describe himself, was a little crooked. We joined the conversation where John was just getting close to finding the sport of squash for the first time, and it would change his life forever.
Because although we love Durango, the small town, we lived in a really, I guess it was isolated. It was way up a valley in a little A-frame shack with no TV, no phone, so definitely different from modern life today, but we really liked it. But it finally started to drive Michelle crazy, I think. So she's a very bright, gifted person. She applied to graduate school. We ended up in Minnesota. She could go to the University of Minnesota, and that's where I first took up squash.
I remember you telling me, you were, I believe you said it was apprentice to a master candy maker, right?
Oh, yeah, that was in Durango.
In Durango.
This wonderful gentleman, Everett Seeley, who used to work for the Mars chocolate factory. You know, it's funny, these cooking jobs I had, like the factory and the bakery, they taught me organizational skills. Because you have to time everything in the kitchen and in the bakery about, when you make what, when it comes out, and you had to have a plan every day. And that really helped me.
Yeah. the skills that translate over towards any other job. Yeah. But then you found squash. So sort of taking a crooked path there. But
what happened there is I had illusions of being a writer at the time. And so Michelle was in graduate school, and I was just looking for a part-time job where I could still do some writing. I actually got a job as a locker room attendant at the Minneapolis Athletic Club. And that's where I first saw squash being played. It was hardball back then. That was in 1985, 86. And I knew how to string rackets from the time I was a kid. My involvement in tennis, something my brother and I did in the basement of our home to make money. And we, in Minneapolis, I found out there was a club in St. Paul called the Commodore Squash Club, a revered squash club. And they had big events there. And I called over there to find out how to string a squash racket one day in terms of how high I could put the tension on it. And the pro there started talking to me and said, hey, we need somebody to string rackets. And of course, I needed the money. So I went over there and met the pro and the club. John Jasinski is the pro's name, one of my mentors, great guy. But, I'd never even really heard of squash growing up in a little town in southern Indiana. And I guess going in the door, thought, gosh, I knew a little bit about it. I guess maybe I thought it was my impression was it was going to be really snobby, because it's a high-end economic demographic. But I walked in, and there were all these people hanging around drinking beer and, from all over the world, and they were all super friendly. And
you felt like you could fit in?
Yeah. I thought, people drinking beer and with a racket around and having a good time, I could do this.
Right, yeah.
So actually, the first guys I saw play, I kind of watched like they were D hardball players. And, I was a pretty good tennis player. And I watched these guys play. And I'm like, this is the dumbest racket sport I've ever seen. And one night I was stringing rackets late at the Commodore Club, and these two guys, Frank Fairman and Jamie Barrett, both of them had played in college, one at Princeton, one at Yale, I believe. And late at night, they were, after their jobs were hitting like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And I went down and watched them, and I just was kind of awestruck. I was like, wow, it's a totally different game from the D players I saw, and these guys were really impressive. So it kind of got me involved in the sport.
John was clearly inspired and captivated by seeing the squash professionals for the first time. This is something that John continues to pass along for both current and new squash fans to enjoy with his role in the Windy City Open. We spend a while going through all aspects of the Windy City Open, but first, John shares a story of a crucial component that is needed for any major squash tournament. You need a glass court. Some venues are easier than others to construct these wonderful arenas for squash fans to enjoy. This is what happened in Chicago. Rewind the clock a little bit and talk a little bit about, once the court starts coming in, this is no small feat to get a 20,000-pound court into the University Club. And describe a little bit about what you and your staff have to do in order to make that happen.
I'd be happy to tell that story, and I'll start with year one, which was almost a catastrophic year that we first brought the glass court in. But, the club, because you've been there, but for anybody listening, it's, limestone, Gothic, architectural treasure, 108 years old. And as you can imagine, we don't have a big dock area. We don't have a big freight elevator. So fortunately, most of the glass panels will fit on the elevator, but the large frame pieces that support the court or that support the court floor, we have to get everything up to the 9th floor to our beautiful Cathedral Hall dining room. And we set up the court in the spectator gallery. So these long pieces, they're 16 feet long. The only way to get them up to the 9th floor is to drop our freight elevator below the first level of the main floor. And we have a special elevator engineer come in, and we then go upstairs, a flight of stairs above that. We open up those elevator doors, the doors that, shield the shaft. And we drop a rope down and time around these 16-foot pieces, and then there's 2 or 3 guys at the bottom, and we carefully brace them on top of the elevator, and there's another assistant on top of the elevator kind of holding them straight and steady. They're not terribly heavy now. They used to be. And then we slowly take the elevator up, 7 or 8 floors, and then we open the elevator, the doors on the floor, the 9th floor, open them up, and then walk that through the kitchen and into the main dining room. I think we have to do that 16 times. All the braces, the support pieces up there. I said, do you have a question? I wanted to rewind back to year one, the first time we did this, because that's a funny story. Yeah, well, funny. It's funny now. At the time, I almost had a heart attack, but, we had a miscommunication, I'll call it, with the court company that we used at that time. And they were bringing in, they told me these pieces they were bringing in were, 18 feet long. And so chief engineer and I, Marty Kane, who's a fantastic engineer, crewman, team member at the University Club, and I got a 18-foot piece of a PVC pipe, walked it through. We figured out we could just make it, if we went through the front lobby and took a turn, we could just make it on top of the freight elevator. But what the company didn't tell us was that there was a big 3-foot flange at the bottom of that beam, and there's no way we could get those things through. So, the first piece we're trying to get through, we can't get it in. It's the first time we've ever done the glass court at the club. And I'm walking around the club with the chief engineer trying to figure out, is there any other way we could get them up to the 9th floor? And we can't find any other way to get them up there. And I'm sweating bullets. I think I've worked at the club 3 or 4 years, and all the money's there, everything's ready to go, and you can't get the cord in. But what happened is the chief figured out that if we cut part of the quarter-sawn oak out of our lobby and busted down a wall, we could make the turn. So he called the general manager, John Flanigan, who's been at the club, I think more than 35 years now, fantastic guy, comes down and takes a look at the situation and says, yeah, let's do it. And I don't know too many general managers of private clubs who would be able to do this, but, John actually grabbed a Sawzall and started cutting into the quarter-sawn oak in the front lobby of his club. And, I'm thinking I'm probably going to be fired when all this is done. If this doesn't go
First and last glass court event, right? Yeah.
But we did it. We got everything in. And, the lobby, if you didn't know what it looked like before, you wouldn't be able to tell. We put it all back together. We got everything up there and got it in. And, that was the start of the glass court in Cathedral Hall. It was very well received.
Well, we both know what the dramatic difference can be having a glass court from reviewing experience, but the Windy City Open has been going on for over 30 years now, and it hasn't always been a glass court. What was the impetus behind making that transition or the leap to bring in the glass court event?
I think that's one of the reasons they hired me when I was recruited to come down from the Minneapolis Athletic Club. I run 2 glass court events in Minneapolis, the U.S. Opens, and I think the club wanted to continue to enhance its reputation. And so they thought, hey, this guy's a pretty well-known coach, but he can also run big events. It'd be cool if we could do this at the University Club. So, we tried to get the U.S. Open one year early on in my days there. It didn't happen. And I can't remember who the tournament got awarded to. This was way before Kevin Klipstein's time. But no big deal. We just decided, hey, what the heck? Windy City Open's been around for, 20-something years. Doesn't have to be the U.S. Open to be a glass court event. We could do a glass court event and kind of put the Windy City Open on the map. So that's what we decided to do.
And so now, fast forward to where it is today, and the Windy City Open is one of the World Series events on the World Tour. And talk a little bit about, I think we all kind of see it come together from the outside, but how do you pull that together from your perspective?
You mean, how do we reach World Series status?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. After the recession hit, I guess having the glass court, a lot of it just centers around the sponsorships and the relationships you're able to build with your sponsors and keep going. The first ones we did, they were done with a company called SSA Global, and that company, they were club members. The CEO was a club member. And they ended up selling the company, but we had an agreement to keep it going for a while. And then, like I said, the recession hit, and we had to downsize the tournament because we didn't have any big sponsors. So I think for a few years there, it was, as low as $20,000, and maybe one year even 10 or 15. I can't remember. And then I think it was 4 years ago now, a good friend of mine at the club, the Windy City Open tournament treasurer, Lonnie Essex, also a bass player in the band in the past, became friends with Mark Walter. Their children attended the same school. Mark Walter's the CEO of Guggenheim Partners. And he's a big sports fan. He's also, I think, the major shareholder of the Los Angeles Dodgers. And, Lonnie had been talking to him about squash and how cool it was. And I was dying for a sponsor one year, and they came in, Guggenheim Partners came in to sponsor it. And it was their first year with us. I think we did a $20,000 or $30,000 event. And Mark came down and looked at it and, saw the squash and brought his family down to watch. And they were, what it's like, Connor, if you've never seen squash before, pro squash, and you like sports and you like, watching athletes, it's, you're pretty, it's a pretty amazing experience. So he really enjoyed it and liked the way we were doing the event. And afterwards pulled me aside and said, hey, Lonnie told me about this glass court thing you used to do, but tell me about that. And what kind of players, do you get? And so I explained to him, kind of what it takes in terms of dollars and cents. And he said, yeah, okay, I think we'll do it. It was a pretty short, sweet conversation. They jumped in for, not going to quote dollars, but a significant amount, the lion's share of what we needed to get the glass court that first year, 4 years ago. And they loved the event. And then we sat down after that event, or towards the tail end of it, with the PSA executive staff, Lee Beachell and Alex Goff, kind of said, hey, they talked to me about what a World Series event, 3-year contract, this is what they're looking for. And the other thing with, and they talked about doing prize money parity at the time, and that turned out to be a really important, very important issue for our sponsor, for Mark Walter and Guggenheim Partners. And I didn't mention Equi Trust Life Insurance Company. They joined us over this 3-year deal as well. Very important to both those groups. So, we had a nice conversation with Mark, and he said, hey, let's do it. And then, this is year 3 of our 3-year contract, and we've really enjoyed the past 3 years. I mean, it's been great to have a World Series event in the Midwest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would echo not just the leap of faith, but really the leadership role that the Windy City Open and Guggenheim and Equi Trust to help bring around the parity issue of prize money in the United States and the world to the forefront. I mean, it really is. It takes events like the Windy City Open to step up and do it. A huge applause.
I'd like just to say, and the U.S. Open. I know the U.S. Squash and U.S. Open were they the first? You would know the answer. Yeah, absolutely.
We were the first. The U.S. Open took that first leap, but it's one of those things of being first. But then you can be out there alone, but to have other people really believe in the cause as well. I mean, that's significant. So hats off.
No, we've been thrilled, and it's been great for us. It's another feather in our cap. The University Club doesn't like to be perceived as a stodgy, old city club. We're not. We're a very progressive club, and the fact that we were able to, the support of all the sponsors, we're able to say, hey, we offer prize money parity at the highest level for, the sport has been great for us.
Well, beyond your title sponsors, I know it takes just a tremendous amount of other sponsors and patrons to help make this event possible. And you end up having to be having some of these conversations. And how do you position it to make it a win-win for your sponsors and the event?
Well, I think for our event, anyway, the biggest thing I think is for the audience that's there. It's a fantastic client entertainment event at what I think is a fairly good value. Our corporate sponsorships at the entry level is $4,000, then $7,000, then $12,500, then $25,000, and then title sponsorship, which is a big number. But, you talk to people about how much they would spend on a golf event for their clients' entertainment, and goes up into the thousands pretty quickly. For $4,000 or $7,000, you can entertain several clients every day over a 7-day period. And, we have a wonderful corporate sponsors lounge that we set up courtside, and our club is known for its fine dining as well. So the food service there, it's not like you're just have a bunch of, pieces of pizza and some hamburger. It's really, fantastic food that the sponsors get, and open bar there for them too. So there's that piece of it. And then the entertainment is, pro squash is captivating, and it's fascinating. The players have great personalities, and they're approachable. And I guess I wouldn't say finally, but as the kind of a coup de grace, the glass court in Cathedral Hall it's unique, a sporting event, a world-class sporting event in a venue where it's surrounded by hand-painted glass and 24-foot ceiling and all these beautiful carved arches on the top. It's totally unique, and it's an intimate experience for a pro sporting event. I mean, you've been a part of it as an assistant director a couple of years, and you've seen it, I think, as a spectator a little bit too. I mean, you have to admit it's pretty unique and cool, right?
It's one of the most unique settings, I think, on the tour. Definitely the Cathedral Hall itself sets it apart from a lot of the other events on the World Tour. So it's
definitely it's unique, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful. And you and I have talked about this before, because I know when you were directing the U.S. Open, it's a blessing and a curse. It's a beautiful, absolutely stunning setting, but at the same time, it's not that big of a venue for the event, and so it's we do wish sometimes we had a little more space to spread things out a little bit. But
well, I think that, one of the nice things or the great things that the PSA Tour has done is with Squash TV, that you're reaching a wider audience. So all that effort, you're maximizing the impact for the community within the Chicago area, but then the world community can also enjoy it. So I think it's been a huge component for the tour and each event. So you've been in the lead role of having to sell squash, and as have I. And there was a NPR piece that came out. It was both a radio piece, but then also a nice article that just it kind of reaffirmed, I know, what we've been saying for so many years, just how great a value of sponsoring a squash tournament can be, and that I believe the quote was that squash is the new golf in terms of the clientele it can reach. And as you know, the sports marketplace and sports sponsorship is such a crowded marketplace that you need new opportunities to reach those clients. I mean,
I saw that article. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I guess I'd say my experience generally has been if I'm talking to someone at a company and they are not familiar with squash, it's definitely a harder sell because they don't really know what they're getting into. If they know squash and they know what it is, then they know the demographic, and I think they understand the value of it. The trick is, just getting people who, have not been exposed to it to see the value in that they can, even though the demographic might not be quite as large as, it's definitely not as large as golf, I guess. It's very targeted, and it's a very elite group. I don't have any of the statistics off the top of my head in terms of, the net worth of the median net worth of a squash player, but it's very high, and lots of decision makers and companies involved in the sport. One of the cool things about pitching it at the club is, we look at the statistics when I'm talking to someone and saying, these are the national statistics, but we think at the club, the statistics, you can raise the bar a little bit because of, we are a university club. That means you have to have a degree just to be a member of the club. So, and we know our demographic. So it's a great connection. But, we're trying to get a watch company involved and a car company involved. And that's been a tougher sell, I think, probably because it doesn't have as much mass media reach.
Well, I love numbers, and I've had to be fairly close to these numbers in the past, so I can fill that data for you. It's 98% of squash players have graduated from college. On average, they have over $300,000 of income coming in per year and over $1.5 million net worth. And 36% of the players also have C-suite status or the owner or president of a company.
Right. So that's definitely one of the pitches we make is like, hey, when you're a corporate sponsor here, it's not the broad reach that Squash TV can give you. It's the people in the audience you're sitting next to in the lounge, and that's one thing I really try to do because it is a smaller crowd and a more intimate setting. I try to connect sponsors with other sponsors, and so they can make new relationships, make friendship. A lot of good business is done, courtside and on the golf course, whatever. So much of it is about relationships, and when you share an experience, it really has an impact sometimes on what happens next, business relationship.
Absolutely. Well, in terms of looking towards the 2017 Windy City Open, what are you most excited about? I mean, you've been doing this for so many years, but I think there's always something new coming up. And so what are you excited about for this year?
Well, last year we started kind of following with U.S. Squash and U.S. Open and the Tournament of Champions. They launched, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, a Women's Leadership Award program, and we thought this is something we should definitely be doing as well. So we did it last year. And through one of our committee people who's also connected with our corporate sponsor, with our title sponsor, Kim Walter, Mark Guggenheim's wife, very involved in a lot of civic activities in Chicago. And we told her about this and wanted to do. We're looking for speakers. Last year, she was able to get Jackie Joyner-Kersee for us as a speaker, which was fantastic to have her there. So started working with Kim last fall, talking about who we could get. And I grew up playing tennis. I mentioned that earlier. We're very excited this year to have Billie Jean King coming as our keynote speaker. She's a pioneer in social justice and equality issues for women in sport, women in business. Needless to say, she's also a tennis legend. I think she's got like 39 Grand Slam titles. Yeah. And I was like maybe 10 or 12 years old when she played Bobby Riggs, and I had older sisters who played tennis, and I just wanted, her to beat Bobby Riggs so badly. Although the whole thing was kind of gimmicky, it really brought a lot of things to light in terms of parity for sport, and it was a big boom for tennis. So I get to meet Billie Jean King. I guess it's related to Windy City. I'm really excited that I get to meet her and that she's going to be in our club.
Yeah, what a great role model and legend, living legend, really. And it's fitting with what Windy City Open's done with parity and prize money that she will be able to attend and celebrate that. So that's great.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And of course, like you said, I'm excited about the pro squash. I do get to watch a bit, even though I'm running around trying to make sure everything's going well. There's some exciting matches from the first round in the men's match. If no one pulls out, which you never know, we've got Rami Ashur and James Bolstrop in the first round. I mean, how crazy is that for a first round match? It's like that could be a final.
Yeah, two former world number ones battling out round one.
And then we've also got Paul Cole facing Mohammed Al-Sharbagi.
Oh, wow.
Paul Cole's definitely been a comer. And I think Mohammed, if I were him, like number one seed, no pressure on the other guy coming in,
Right.
That could be a good one.
Well, that's really exciting. And I'm sure all the hard work that you and your team put in, I mean, the community just thoroughly enjoys it. And so, thank you for all the hard work you do on behalf of the Chicago and world squash community.
You're welcome. It is a lot of work, and there are days when you pull your hair out. But one of the fantastic things about it is, like you talked about the community, is just first of all, the kind of staff community, the university club and the athletic department team. John Rooney, Yoni Elis, and Tanisha Tillman really work with me side by side to pull the event off. And then we've got two committees, probably a total of about 20 people, and tons of volunteers really help pull it all together. And one thing we haven't talked about is Metro Squash. And I guess for a World Series event, we're an oddity. We're a hybrid. We're a club event, but at the same time, we have this really top level status as a pro event. We don't really run the event to make the club a lot of money. We try to run it pretty close to break even, maybe make a little money, but our goal is to donate a chunk of cash to Metro Squash at the end of it. And they've been at the heart of our community. They've been a part of our event since they first came, incorporated in, I guess, 11 years ago now. They're part of it, and we're thrilled to keep it going. We'll keep it going as long as we can. So, good problem.
The University Club of Chicago and its squash program are part of the upper echelon of squash in the United States. We asked John for his thoughts on some of the key ingredients on how they developed their successful programming.
Well, I'd say the first one is don't think it can't be done. It's like when I started there wasn't any junior squash at the club, and I started, and it's like part of your brain just thinks, well, you're downtown. And of course, some people live downtown, but not a lot of people live downtown. And you're never going to get kids coming in after school. You're never going to, maybe you'll have some weekends, but that's it. If you'd have told me when I started that our junior program would be as robust as it is now, I probably would not have bought it. But, so we started, doing stuff on the weekends when I was there, and, it started to grow and grow. And, then we figured out the kids really needed to play more. So we started to have more kind of informal social play days with the kids, and got all these, young squash playing members. A lot of them are going to have kids eventually, and then they're going to want their kids to share in the sport they love. And it's been a great situation for the club. We've really attracted more members just because of our junior program. Once you get critical mass, other juniors are going to want to come to play at your club. I think
so. Setting a vision.
Yeah, right. Setting a vision, and then just also just like don't believe out of the box that it can't be done because it's not been done before. When I talk to other club pros, like in big cities sometimes, and they're kind of like, oh, well, we can't get any families downtown. We've proven that's not true. You can. And, we've even had families relocate from the burbs to downtown, believe it or not, just so the kids could be closer to the club. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is, there's a lot of good club pros out there. It's just, a lot of it is just building relationships with many people as you can and offering opportunities, make it easy for people who've never played the game before to get into the game. A program that we offered when I first started that we recently rejuvenated because we have still so many people who want to get into the game is called a squash crash course, where take as many as 8 people on 2 courts who've never played the game before. And at the end of an hour and a half, they know the basic rules, and we've got them playing, and they're having a good time. From there, we usually get, I'd say at least half of those people end up sticking with the sport. Maybe not right away, but eventually they come back to it. And even if they don't, they've experienced what it's all about. Yeah, it's just, little things like that, and we've been trying to grow our women's program for the past few years. I started a program called Wine, Women, and Squash, which, You throw wine in the title, it's bound to get some fans right away. But basically, it's just a mixer. And then after the hour and a half mixer, anybody who wants to join us, we go down to the President's Bar at the club and have some food or snacks or just a quick drink if somebody has to go on the run. And those have been extremely successful. The one I ran last month had 16 women come, and sometimes some of the girls in our junior program will come join them on the court. Squash is an easy sell once you get people on the court. It's a really fun game.
Now it's time for the quickfire portion of our interview. This is where I ask each guest the same questions to hear their range of answers and advice. If you have any questions you'd like our guests to answer, or if you have a great answer to one of these questions yourself, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Either way, we hope you enjoy this portion of Squash Radio. As we move into the quickfire, hopefully this isn't as daunting for you.
Well, no, I always say don't give advice unless someone asks you for it. But you asked me, so I'm not sure how I did. But there you go.
Oh, that was great. So quickfire. Moving on to this segment. I mean, this is you can answer as quick or as long as you want. There's no time on this at all. Starting off with
figured out by now, me answering short is probably not my strength. But go ahead.
Your favorite movie or documentary?
Favorite movie or documentary?
Maybe these will be harder.
Yeah, well, it's because I like so many movies. It's really challenging. But I'm gonna show that I have a nerdy side and say Lord of the Rings.
Any one of them stands out, or just the entire as a series?
The trilogy. If I had to pick one, I guess I'd pick the first one, The Fellowship of the Rings. All my bandmates, if they ever listen to this, are going to be making fun of me for being a nerd, but that's fine.
All right. What is something or an activity that gives you disproportionate amount of happiness?
Gotta be playing guitar.
Yeah,
no doubt.
And how often do you try and play?
I try to play every day, but I don't succeed in that effort. I would probably say I play 4 or 5 times a week. Sometimes it's only 20 minutes, but other times it's 2 hours. I guess I haven't been competing that much lately, but I will say that I get a disproportionate amount of pleasure after winning a tough match. I just haven't won one in a long time, so.
There you go. Is there anything that you have you're thinking of trying or have tried recently that's new to you? And
anything I've tried recently that's near to me, is that what you said?
New to you.
New to me. That's a good question for me because I have my spiel for the new year for members to motivate everybody and as well as my staff and I is get out of your comfort zone. So that's the thing I've been trying to encourage them to do. That's how we grow, right? You have to get out of everything you're comfortable with, do some different things. So the thing, I haven't done it yet, but I've been working on it, is I'm not much of a singer. I can carry a tune, but I'm going to do a solo performance at an open mic night with a friend of mine that we've been working on. And they're songs that I've written. It's a double level of discomfort, not just performing, singing solo on the stage I have a little backup, but singing songs that I've written too. Looking forward to it, but yeah, that's new to me.
I like it. Well, I can't wait to hear how it goes. Do you have you scheduled it, or are you still?
No, it's going to have to wait till after the Windy City Open. The local place that I'm going to perform at is they do it on Tuesday nights, and currently that's when my band is practicing. So it's going to have to wait until March. I'll send you a special invitation, Connor.
All right, well, I'll have to make a special trip. Is there an inspiring talk or video that you could recommend that someone could easily find on the internet?
Let's see. I can tell you that I don't spend a lot of time on the internet surfing. I read New York Times online and that kind of stuff.
Or an article, anything that's easy to share.
Wow, pal. Nothing is coming to mind there. Sorry.
Well, that's all right. This one can segue nicely. If you had to give a TED Talk, you're familiar with TED Talks, though, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay. If you had to give a TED Talk, but the rules were it couldn't be something that you're known for, so you had to go try and explore something and share it. What would you want to do?
How do you talk about something I'm not known for? I'd probably talk about poetry. Interesting.
Why?
Well, it was one of my fields of study, and I do still write a little bit. I think in many ways it's kind of people have lost the appreciation for it. I think, hip hop comes the closest to being an active part of that still. So that would be new to me to talk about that. I'd probably address it in terms of hip hop and modern lyrics and how that's addressed, as well as what's going on with contemporary poetry.
Have you heard much of the Hamilton soundtrack?
I've heard bits and pieces, but my family and I went to see Hamilton.
Oh my gosh, even
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of people that have seen it, you can count. So you saw it?
Yeah, it was a Christmas present for Michelle, and I've got two sons, Aiden and Kian, 18 and 16, and both of them really like history, and of course they're teenagers, so they love hip hop, so they loved it. Yeah, and I loved it too. It was fantastic. I would urge you to see it. Are you familiar with the soundtrack?
Yeah, I mean, I've only to see it is something I would love to do. I listen to the soundtrack regularly, and I mean, it was just, I mean, talk about Lin-Manuel Miranda's complete genius, and just my brain lights up when I hear it, and it really taps into, I think you said, like it's lyrical, it's poetry, and it's history all combined into one. That
fantastic.
So
yeah, what a genius. So, hey, I'm going to flash back to your earlier question. I thought of something that I would recommend that people watch because it has to do with Hamilton. It's a show I'd honestly never watched before, but I was channel surfing. This was like 6 weeks ago. And I saw Drunk History. Have you ever seen this show called Drunk History?
Yes.
And Lin-Manuel Miranda is the guest.
Oh, no way.
Yes, and he tells the story. He basically tells you the story of Hamilton, the musical, but like he tells the story of Alexander Hamilton and these two women. I can't remember the actresses' names, but you'd recognize them.
Oh my gosh.
They're perfectly cast, and they play the two main characters, Hamilton and Burr. And oh my God, it's absolutely hilarious. And Lin-Manuel Miranda's trash, and he's telling the story and everything. So you could probably find that online.
Yeah, for sure. And I can't believe I haven't seen that yet. So I'm gonna have to go.
You got to check it out. It's hysterical. And
I will,
really,
for sure.
All right.
And this is the last question. So I don't think we need a drum roll, but we'll do one anyway. And this is in your wheelhouse. If you could recommend any book, it could be one book or books that people would read, what would it be and why?
Yeah, well, I'm an avid reader. I read, I read on the train back and forth, so that's a really challenging one for me. I would say one of the best nonfiction books I've read in years, I think it's called Being Mortal or On Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. I think it's Gawande, I think is his last name. He's a physician, and he talks about aging and death in our society and what it's become and how to handle it. And, my parents have both passed away, but if they were part of the aging population right now, it's a book I would have found invaluable. And so, and even I find it invaluable even as we're all going to die. I think, nobody's going to nobody gets out of here alive, as Jim Morrison said. So it's a great book to read, to think about end of life. It's a tough topic that a lot of people don't talk about, but this physician, Dr. Gawande, talks about it honestly and with great research and beautifully. So highly recommend that one, Being Mortal.
Well, that actually sounds very interesting, and it's a topic that actually really interests me because there are tough conversations and topics to have, and so any tool or resource to really kind of break it down and humanize it, I would love to read. So, Being Mortal.
He's great at asking the right questions and making you think about them in a positive fashion.
And then what's the other one?
I have to. Yeah, that's a tougher call. Well, I'll tell you one that I love, just a beautiful novel, if I can think of the title of it. Anne Patchett is the author, and Bel Canto, I would come to me. It's a novel. Actually, it was made into an opera. Played in Chicago last year. Unfortunately, I missed it. So, yeah, Bel Canto, and the author is Anne Patchett, and the story is about an opera star who is imported to this banana republic. They've also imported this Japanese business leader whose his favorite singer is this woman, this diva. And that's why he comes, and they're trying to get him to do a business deal. What happens is these political guerrilla group takes over the house the night of performance and hold her hostage. And it's a story about what transpires in the house as they're holding them hostage. It doesn't sound that fantastic maybe, but it's extremely well written, and the relationships that develop with the hostages and the guerrillas. It's a really beautiful novel.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a good one to check out. So, on that note, I just want to thank you for spending this time. I especially given that it's really in the thick of the season for you and how busy you are and juggling so many things. So I appreciate you taking so much time and everything you've done for the sport.
My pleasure. It was really fun talking with you, and I hope the listeners find the conversation interesting. And if anybody, this is the final plug, if anybody wants to come to see the Windy City Open and see some of the great stuff we were talking about, tickets are still available at windycityopen.com. February 23rd through March 1st is the tournament. And Connor, I know you're busy too, but we'd love to see you out there.
I'd love to be there. All right. Well, thanks so much for your time, John. Really appreciate it.
All right. My pleasure, Connor. Take care, man.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and for joining us on Squash Radio. We hope you enjoyed this latest episode. But before you leave, we just have one quick last message. As you know, Squash Radio wants to help tell some of the best stories from Squash World. But in order to do that, we want and welcome your help. Do you know a person or a story that involves squash that is interesting, funny, moved you, you care about, reflects your passion for the sport? Well, share it with us and let's try and get it out there on the air. You can email me at squashradio@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media. Again, thanks for your time and, well, until next time, be well and have fun.